What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our Round 4 live stream for the Valero Texas Open. Going to get you ready for all your lineup Sunday, whether it's over there with your questions down there in the chat. We'll go through a weather report over there for the final round as well as some contest selection, a little bit of lineup construction out there towards the end as well, to go ahead and put it all together. But hopefully Saturday is treating you guys nicely. We got some Final Four on tonight. Also, NBA, MLB at full force at this point as well. And even some UFC that I saw. I have a few lineups out there for myself. I saw a few people down in chat that are regulars here playing in some of the same GPPs. So hopefully that goes well for all of you out there as well. And you're ready to crush it out here for this weekend. So it started off with a look at the golf course, which today was a lot harder. I mean, the wind was higher across the board. And as somebody that on the fade perspective or prop side of things, got a little ahead of myself there, put in a whole bunch of fades. I was really happy to see those kind of scores. Now, in terms of your lineups, you probably had a lot of guys shooting over par, but that was the regular today. It was almost a 2 over par scoring average. And those later starters that got a little bit of higher wins compared to the morning guys played about a half a stroke harder. Now, just like round number 2, there was also a quote unquote weather edge. It was about 0.25 shots over there in round number 2. It's not like you had to have guys with one side versus the other. It was the threesomes off of holes 1 and 10. So there wasn't going to be a massive edge to begin with. And if you sort it over here by the best scores of the day, you had some guys that went off late, like a Hoagie and Novak, that were already up there towards the top end of the board, but also some guys like Corey Connors that hardly even made the cut, had one of the better rounds of the day. Toasty, same kind of thing. He was -3 to start the round. So it didn't really matter what side you went out there and played. And I don't know what the tee time situation is going to be out there for round 4 quite yet, assuming that it's probably going to be threesomes off of both tees again. But even if it is twosomes off of hole number 1, the weather situation looks a little bit too flat to go out there and want to play a whole bunch of weather. And considering that it's round 4 showdown, we have placement points in play anyways, it's not the kind of slate where you could go all in on it anyways. So looking at this forecast, you'll see that it looks just as windy out there for tomorrow, if not even windier. And the other added factor with this forecast is that it's probably about 10 degrees cooler than what you had out there for round 3. So rounds 1 and 2 was closer to 80, 90 degrees in the afternoon. Tomorrow, you're talking about a high around 51 degrees Fahrenheit. I will say that some of the local forecasts like weather.com, that sort of thing, are calling for closer to a 60-degree high tomorrow. So maybe it's not quite this 50 degrees that we have here in the HRRR, but either way, a little bit cooler than what you've had to start this event, and some wind gusts that are going to match what you had for today. And I will say that the pin locations, if you guys stopped by my prop betting live stream last night, they did look pretty tough out there for round number 3. I would expect them to be a little easier out there for tomorrow, just because a lot of the toughest pins on the golf course were used out there today, but it's not going to make a massive difference. This is still going to be some really tough conditions out there, which is what you're always going to get, right, when you have this 15 to 20 mile an hour winds. So it doesn't change our process all that much. The main difference over here for Sunday is, of course, going to be the placement point aspect, which is always what makes Sunday Showdown a little bit different than rounds 1 through 3. Just like main slate, you've got to consider some guys towards the top end of the board. And I guess just to do a little bit of a refresher for people that are maybe new out here to Sunday Showdown, I usually want 2-3 guys that are going to give me placement points in lineups, and then sometimes 2 to even 4 players in the rest of that lineup to offset some of that chalk. So usually you need the winner out there for Sunday Showdown. Now, because Brian Harman has a 3-shot lead, there is a chance that he could win this event yet still not be in the optimal lineup. But like when you have a whole pack of guys at like -8, -9, like let's assume that Brian Harman, right, wasn't on the slate tomorrow. Let's just remove him from the top right there. If you did that, the winner tomorrow you'd have to have over there for your lineups, because if you're coming out of a pack of a pretty tight group there with -6 to -9, if you're going to shoot like -2, -3 and win, that is going to be an optimal performance. Not necessarily true over there with Brian Harman for tomorrow, but on a Sunday Showdown slate, you usually need the winner, and then you usually need 1 or 2 guys on top of that. They're going to get you top 5 to top 10 placement points. And the reason I say top 5 to top 10 is if you're already starting with a guy in the top 5, they probably have the top 3 for you, right? They're probably going to have to finish in second or third after that potential winner that you're already playing. And then if you're starting a little bit further back, like if you played somebody here at T17, for example, they can still go out there and get you those placement points. Maybe they're not finishing top 3 like some of those other guys if they go out there and have a nuclear round. But if they shoot like -3, -4, starting at -3 here, there's a really good chance that they're top 5ing maybe even finishing top 4, top 3 if they get lucky, with some of the course conditions being tough tomorrow. But that's what you want, right? You need, maybe one guy starting a little bit further down. This can be a piece of average to maybe even slightly below average ownership. If you're getting creative with these guys at T17, you're going to have one guy up here in the top 5, most likely. That's going to be most likely the chalkiest guy that you're taking in a lineup. You can make it 2 guys starting in the top 5 if you want, but even if you want to go a little bit further down the board and take a shot on these guys at like T8, maybe T10 out there for that second player, that's usually how you're going and finding those placement points. Now, the rest of your lineups, so there can be 3, even 4 spots that you have the rest to build with. That's where you got to get your leverage, right? Especially in those like big $5, $20 GPPs, you're going to have to find a way to get different to the field. And that's where you do that towards the middle to bottom end of the board. So just a little bit of a refresher over there for anyone with Sunday Showdown. But as we typically do here, we're going to go through the shots gained metrics here in a second. Any player deep dives that you guys have, feel free to go ahead and let me know down in chat. And we'll go through those after we go through them in general. So the total shots gained, just the general stats over there for today. Usually like to start with ball striking and see who was hitting the ball well, but maybe didn't make a whole bunch of putts. And I mean, Thorbjorn Olesen would be the poster child for that. Gained over 3 strokes ball striking, but lost over 3 strokes putting. If he can get a few more putts to drop, could be in for a little bit of positive regression tomorrow. Guys like Matt McNeely, he putted decently. Same thing with Novak. That's why they had some of the better rounds of anyone on the golf course, but also some solid ball striking stats. So if you're looking for a conviction play towards the top end of the board, maybe for those placement points that I was just mentioning, I think you could do a whole lot worse than these guys that were ball striking it well for round 3. And it's still only an 18-hole sample size, so we don't want to completely overreact to what we saw out there today. But as I always mention here on these streams and these videos, I would rather have a process, have a rhyme and reason for getting to my player pool than just trying to pull random names out of hats. Because we go up here to the top, if we're going to try and find guys to go out there and use in our lineups, I want it to be the guys that have the dark green in these ball striking categories. So for example, Novak, already pointed him out before. You got McNeely right down there in that category. You have a few other guys that even lost strokes off the tee. Like look at that out there with Keith Mitchell, also lost strokes over there in approach. It's not to say that it's impossible for him to go out there and get there, but if we're comparing a Novak to a Mitchell up here, maybe Novak is slightly higher owned than what Mitchell is for tomorrow. That's why I prefer to go with Novak, right? Because the shots gained metrics just look a lot better on that sort of play. But where it's really useful out there for your round 4 process isn't so much with this chalk towards the top. I will look at the full event stuff, by the way, as well, to go out there and try and find my pieces of chalk to kind of land on. But it's even more useful the further down the board you go. So for example, Ben Griffin gained off the tee and on approach today, but lost 4 strokes putting. That is highly unlikely to go out there and happen again. Let's say he's even a neutral in that category. That is a massive improvement out there round to round. You can see it, Bud Colley lost in both categories. That would be the 2 shortened categories, but gained over there in the ball striking categories. These are the sort of players that I'm actively looking for. So it's not just this ball striking over here. You can sort it by regular shots gained off the tee. You can look at regular shots gained approach as well. That's a good way to go out there and find some of your ball striking poppers. But I also like looking at the short game stats. And if you've been here for a while, you know that these guys that gain like 2-3 shots over there in these short game categories usually lucked out a bit. There's a lot of variance out there in those 2 categories. So for example, guys like Mac Meissner towards the top, I don't know if I'd count on him going out there and gaining 3 strokes putting again. Jordan Spieth, the short game was definitely what carried him out there for round 3. Not to say that these guys are unplayable. For example, Jordan Spieth, I'm still playing over there for tomorrow. He's a high upside player, really good course history player as well. I'm taking a shot on him because he's there at T17. You shoot someone like 3 under, could be those top 5 placement points. But this is not the reason why, right? It's not because he had a good short game day. If anything, it's actually a little bit of a red flag and a reason against playing somebody like a Jordan Spieth. So that's what we're looking at in the short game categories. Maybe guys that are due to come back down to earth a little bit, that gained a whole bunch of strokes. You can say the same thing around the green as well. These guys that gained over 2 strokes in that category, heck, even over a stroke there around the green, unlikely to do that very consistently out there on tour. Whereas the flip side is true as well. These guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes putting, lost a whole bunch of strokes around the green, could be due to have a better day out there tomorrow. So, if you're looking for those lower owned plays, these guys that lost a whole bunch putting could be a good way to go out there and find those, right? I already mentioned Olesen before, also Ben Griffin there, but even your Malnati's, your Fisk, your Ben James, your Patrick Rogers of the world down low, especially if they hit the ball well in approach. And you can see here, all of these guys gained strokes on approach today. So it's not even like they played terribly elsewhere. If they're even just a neutral putting over there for round 4, they're a much more respectable play out there for your fantasy score. So I'll probably be playing, actually, I already built my player pool. I can tell you off the top of my head that of these guys here that are gaining on approach and then losing with the putter, I'll include John Pock there too. I'm playing 4 of these guys up here towards the top. So, my process is usually pretty simple. I'm always going to kind of land on these sort of players, especially when they're not chalky. I mean, outside of a Ben James, he's the only one starting up there in the top 20. That's what you can use to find some low-owned diamonds in the rough. We've also got this around the green stats. So we focused on putting out there to start. The guys that lost a whole bunch around the green could also be due to bounce back a bit. So you can see Norlander over there starting in the top 10 could be in line for some placement points. You can see lost strokes around the green. Now, it didn't have a nuke round putting either. So could be due for, or I shouldn't say due, or he sets up well out there for round 4 showdown at least. Guys like Harry Higgs, Gary Woodland, you wouldn't expect them to lose 2.5 strokes in that category. Alanto Griffin, Mav McNeely. Now, he did gain strokes putting, so it kind of offsets it. Same thing with Lanto here, right? He lost 2 around the green, but he gained about a stroke over there putting. But if you've got good tee to green stats, like especially good ball striking over there like you had with Mav McNeely, he could still be a play over there for your round 4 lineup. So that's how you use those out there to your advantage. And as I was mentioning off the bat, I do use the entire event as well. So not just what we had out there for round 3, especially with taking the guys starting in the top 5. If I'm going to try and go up here and find my conviction plays, this is a good way to go out there and do so. Now, Brian Harmon, if we're just looking at regular shots gained ball striking, he's the top guy starting in the top 5. Now, guys like Cantlay, a Grillo, a Francesco Molinari are also shining a little bit further down the board, but that's another data point that you can use to your advantage as well. So not just the shots gained metrics, right, but you have round 4 historical over there on the SHIPIT Nation Stone. A lot of other stats that you can incorporate into your process as well. Like, I know we didn't even talk about birdie or better percentage, par 5 scoring here on the live stream, but that's something that I lean into heavily over there with my process on my own end. So whether it's that course history, that's something that I lean into as well, right? There's a lot that you can add on top of this, just the raw shots gained metrics here, to go out there and have a well-rounded process. So let me see if there's any player deep dives that we need to do out there together. If you haven't gotten it down there in chat yet, go ahead and throw it in there right now. But yeah, we're going to go through the shots gained metrics, whether it's for round 3, the entire event, on any players that you want. And then afterwards is when we'll talk about the DraftKings stuff. So let's see what the first deep dive is going to be here for round 4. So a lot of comments. First off, welcome on in, everyone. We have Go Collect Notes down there. Timothy as well. Also Sites. Hopefully you're having a solid day. Nick says he wants the Little Hobbit to fall short. I see what you did there. Fall short with the short guy. And I agree with you there. Let's see what happens. What's going on, Carolina? What's going on, Albert, as well? Let's see. A lot of comments. I got to find the actual questions here at some point. I do love some carnage, Steven. I got to say, Live Golf today was a blast out there. I know the PGA side was some carnage as well, but I was at the Live event. That's what I mostly focused on out there in person. It was unbelievable. I mean, there were guys hitting chip shots that were hitting the wind and running out 15 to 20 feet. I can't wait for tomorrow, especially with some Sunday pressure. It's going to be fun down there in Doral. What's going on, Goku? So you're looking for the mastermind video with Tambo. Yeah, man, it was a good conversation with Tambo. I think we planned for like 45 minutes, but we went for a little bit over an hour because we had so much to talk about. So it was a fun time, and I think you'll enjoy it, man. Let's see. You think that there's a smaller chance for a nuke round, not impossible, but reduced? For sure, yeah. When you have these sort of conditions, I mean, nuke round is something like -4. So maybe it's the expectations that we have to change a little bit, but I agree with you. Not going to see as many birdies. Stephen Fisk was putting blindfolded. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of his go-to. He's not the best putter that you have out there in tour. He's a pretty good ball striker, though, from what I've heard from the Korn Ferry Tour. This week, he's lost he gained in every category but the putter, where he lost over shot there. Round 3, lost 3 strokes putting. So it was mostly round 3 where he's actually lost with the putter. He's a good bounce back candidate. And they're at T28. Let me actually see if I'm playing him, because if not, I might have to make an amendment to my player pool to add him to it, because that's a good play. Yeah, he's not in my player pool currently, but I don't know, man. I might have to change it up and add him there, because that's a damn good call. You bet Novak's billiards game is strong? I bet you it probably is, man. He's I've never played against him or anything, but he's good at putting, that's for sure. And if you're talking about the bank shot that he had off that one, I think it was 16, right? He hit the stands to the right. That was pretty sweet too. But he's a good putter, so that's why I think he'd be good at pull. Putting and pull, there's a lot of similarities that you can take between the two. But yeah, that bank shot was fun as well. How much does approach weigh out? If you gain strokes in approach but lost off the tee, net zero, is it a wash or worth a deeper look? It's probably a wash for me, man, but I do slightly prefer the approach play over off the tee. So if you're gaining off the tee, but if you're losing off the tee, but you're gaining on approach, I think that it's still positive. Maybe not as big a positive, right? If you were gaining in both categories, but approach play is the most important for me. Thoughts on Harry Hall and Collie? So Harry Hall continues to lose stroke short game. So I actually think he sets up quite well out here for Sunday, at least if you can get the short game turned around. Let's start with Harry Hall. He's the one I was talking about with the short game. So you can see round 3, he lost around the green, lost about a half a stroke over there with the putter. Round 2 was the same thing. In fact, even worse out there in those two categories. I mean, the ball striking has been there. It gained 5 strokes over there in round 2. Today, it wasn't as good, but he still gained 2 strokes over there with his iron play. I think he sets up particularly well. Then, yeah, Bud Colley was the other one you were asking about. Lost strokes in the 2 short game categories, but was solid there with the ball striking. You know, this isn't like an insane stat profile, right? I mean, he's only gaining a little bit over 2 strokes over there with the ball striking, but it's a solid one, especially starting there at T28. He's not really going to give you top 3, top 5 placement points, but top 10 is possible, and top 10 with like a -3, maybe even a -4 round, that could totally get there for an optimal play. Round 4, let's finish strong. Amen to that. Got my coffee here. I'll cheers you with that. How many potential leaders am I using for a round 4 lineup? So 3 guys that can finish in the top 10. And that doesn't mean guys starting in the top 10. There could be even guys like Collie there at T28 that are technically like a placement point guy for me. So it's 3 guys. And the way I kind of relay it to my guys on my Patreon page, as you guys know, right, I have my own site that I go out there and run. I say 3 guys towards the top end of the board because there's never really a cutoff point. It's a lot more nuanced than that. So I won't say like I have to have 3 guys starting at T20 or better, just 3 guys up there towards the top end of the board. Your other 3 spots should either be mid to guys towards the bottom end of the boards. That's how I go out there and structure my round 4 process. You could slightly tweak it, but that's a pretty good blueprint right there. 3 and 3, I'd say. Yeah, cheers to round 4. Got my coffee here. Is the wind affecting the putting? So I didn't get to see the broadcast, but yeah, I mean, if it's blowing 20 miles an hour, it is for sure going to affect it. And at Live Golf, it was blowing closer to 25 miles an hour. It was definitely impacting the putting. The bank shot was the basis for the joke. Yep. Unreal. And yeah, he signed the wall. That's what I saw. I didn't see the shot live or anything. I was in my Uber home when I ended up seeing the post on that. That's just a legendary move to go over there and sign the spot that you hit. He's a funny guy. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Novak. I'm familiar with him because he's from the area down here. I have buddies that went to the same school as him, that kind of thing. And I've just heard that he's a funny dude. He's a class guy too. Like he doesn't act too big, which I like for players. I mean, nice if Denny can get some tee to green going. Yeah, I mean, the putter's back, Ross. But yeah, like you said, he's got to figure out a way to gain strokes on approach. Thoughts on Keegan and Fleetwood? So I like Fleetwood for a little bit of a bounce back, mostly because the short game, kind of like Harry Hall, is the reason why he struggled. Today, you can see he lost about 1.5 strokes in that category. And this is a good example. I know we had the question before about a guy losing off the tee and gaining on approach. Like, I'm okay with this kind of stat profile. Like, I'm not sure what happened with Tommy. Maybe it was a water ball. Like I said, I was out on the golf course, didn't really get a good test. It kind of just looks like his driving accuracy was off. He only hit 42% of his fairways today. But yeah, losing 1.5 strokes there, that's not going to happen often for Tommy. He's a very solid, very consistent driver of the golf ball. And he gained over 2.5 strokes on approach. I think he sets up well. Then the other one was what, Keegan Bradley, that you wanted to know about. So Keegan Bradley lost with the putter, then was solid elsewhere. I think both set up like better than most. Like Keegan's probably like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. Other guys probably the same kind of thing. 6.5, 7 out of 10 on both of those two. They burned you today. Well, hey, if they burned you today, Nick, that means you better go back if you're going to go out there, because if you fade them after they burned you one day, they're going to nuke the next day. That is just how the rules work. Only 7 or so guys under par today. Same for tomorrow. It's tough to say without knowing what the conditions are going to be. Like, I mean, if they're wrong about the weather, could be 30 guys that end up under par. Assuming that the weather forecast holds up and it's actually maybe even windier than what you had for today, then yeah, probably something right about that. T28 and T10 is only 2 strokes. Totally agree. That's why I think those T28s you could use for some placement points. But to finish top 3, that's a big difference, right? To get into that top 3, top 5. So they can get you placement points, but they're not going to get you those elite tier points. The only way you're going to get into that top 3 is if you shoot like a -8, a -9. And as we were talking about before, like I think -4 is about as low as you're going to see out there tomorrow. And there might only be like 7 or 8 guys that are breaking par in general. So that's why I say you probably can't finish top 3 if you're there at T28, even if it is only a 2-stroke difference. There's just not a lot of low rounds out there, unfortunately. What's going on? Pretty sure Keegan's a WD for tomorrow. Dude, that stash he has, I know that's a joke about the stash he has. Legendary. I think the best stash on tour, at least with Johnson Wagner now calling shots rather than hitting shots. You think I'm right on Tommy? He'll win overseas on the tour before he wins over here. I can't take credit for that, though, Ross. That's actually an LSU Nick truther over there that said that first. So credit to Nick on that one. You hope Novak can chase down Harman. I hope somebody chases down Harman. Seems like a good dude and will be a good feeder. Yeah, if it's not Novak, give me somebody there at like -7, -8 that shoots something like -4, because I mean, he could easily shoot 2-3 over par. I mean, we saw that from a lot of the field out there today. We'll see what happens. It could be interesting, especially with the kind of wind and weather that we have. But if Brian Harman does the Brian Harman thing he did at the Open, where everyone's like, oh, he's going to come back, right? Sunday pressure. Oh, really tough conditions. Brian Harman, what's going to happen? Right? He nutted on the field. He went out there. He shot like, I forget what it was, like 2-3 under par on Sunday. We'll see what happens. I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll be interesting, but who knows, man? He's a killer. He's a stone cold killer. Brian Harman, that is. You know you're going back. I do know that, by the way, Nick. And if you didn't, you know what's going to happen, right? So you better go back to those two. And then, yeah, Chandler Phillips does have a good stash. But in terms of like actual like big players, I got to give it to Keegan. But yeah, in terms of actual substance there, Chandler Phillips has an epic one too. So let's go over here to DraftKings now. Let's talk through some of the contests that are available, which are a little bit bigger than what we've had the last few days. So we actually do have the big $25 GPP. That's what you have here, 150 max with 50K to first. Still super top heavy, so you don't love that out there. But the big 555 is a little bit bigger than what you had for the last few days. Same really top heavy sort of payout structure, but like even this $100 single entry is a little bit bigger than what you had for the last few days. So in terms of actually choosing contests, there's a lot out there that makes sense. I believe you had the $10 18 max posted. So let's see if I can find that one on there. At least earlier today, I was seeing that one. So yeah, look at that right there. $10 18 max, one of the best contests that you could possibly enter. By the way, reason for that is it's 10% to first and then 10% of that over there to 10th. That is the ideal payout structure. We also have this 40K albatross. So this is a massive single entry. It's nearly 4,000 entries. This is not normal. Normally it's like 400 entries, right? Over there for any given round. This is not going to fill. There's no chance that this $12 single entry fills. So get in there. It's a guaranteed contest, should overlay. And if it doesn't overlay, it's still a really good payout structure. You can see up here, it is 10% to first and a pretty flat payout structure after that. You also have the $33. I thought that one was also a little bit bigger than usual. I guess not. This is the normal $33 that we normally see out there for round number 4. But yeah, like the $10 18 max, that's a nice one to actually go out there and enter. And I do want to check the drive the green. So the drive the green is 20% over there to first place. It's still top heavy, but it's a little bit of a better payout structure than what you have in that $25 GPP. So contests, I'd give them like a 6 out of 10. They're better than most slates that we've had over the last month or so. They're not ideal. We'll have to see what they do out there for Augusta National next week. If you're the casual, your average player watching this sort of live stream, probably be entering that $12 albatross. That one's going to be money. $33, even that $100 single entry that we went through, those are going to be the absolute nuts for you. If you're entering the big $25 or $5 GPPs, just know what you're getting yourself into, right? When you're entering against, in the case of the $25 GPP, 9,400 entries. The drive the green, you're entering against 12,000 other entries. It's going to be tough to beat that many people, especially with only a couple lineups. And there are going to be people, I might not 150 max this, but you're going to have people out here in this 150 max that are entering every single lineup that they possibly can. And, if you're only entering 3 or 4 lineups, that's why it's so tough. to go out there and take those kind of things down. So, if you're only going to enter a few lineups, maybe take those entry fees and look at some of those other contests that we mentioned there. Other thing I want to go through would be you're actually putting together lineups. And I know we had the question about like how many guys I'm taking towards the top. This is a good way where I can show you that. So the way I like to build my Sunday Showdown lineups, at least if I'm doing them by hand, if I'm not doing them by hand, by the way, I will do this with rolls on my optimizer. I will force in at least 2-3 guys up there towards the top. But I like to get my placement points like out of the way early. So I'm going to throw in a Novak into this lineup. I'm also going to throw in a Valimaki because he's been solid with the approach play all week. And I'm also going to throw in a Denny McCarthy. So I've got 3 guys starting in the top 10. They're all going to have some ownership. But with our last 3 spots, that's where all of our differentiation is going to come in. So just to show you what that looks like, you could probably take an 8K guy here. So let's throw in a Ben Griffin for that putting regression. If you remember, he lost like 4 strokes putting today. So hopefully he can get that figured out for tomorrow. So let's throw him in there. And then let's throw in a Gary Woodland as a massive pivot off of Brian Harman. Now, with this kind of salary remaining, a lot of your like casuals, the people that don't really understand game theory, right? People sitting on the toilet drunk in the middle of the night, right? Are going to go, oh, I could play Brian Harman who's in first. And you get placement points out there for Sunday. That might be true, but you already have a McCarthy, a Valimaki, and a Novak in this lineup that are all going to be well over 15% owned, and in some cases over 20% owned. Like you have there with a Denny McCarthy, you throw in a Brian Harman on top of that. I mean, you're just way overloaded out there with the chalk, right? There's a line when you get too chalky over here in GBPs, and that would definitely be the case in the $5 or the $25. Now, if this was cash, you wouldn't care at all, right? You can go out there and take a lot of guys up there towards the top. And cash, game theory really isn't a factor out there with your process. But even in like single entries or those smaller field GPPs, you want to avoid this sort of lineup construction. So it doesn't even have to be a Woodland, right? You can still play somebody like, let's say, a Ryder or a Fowler there, especially if your last man in is going to be a pivot. So, you'd want to stay away from the Hoagies, the Hisatunes that are going to be that 15, maybe even 20% ownership range out there in GPPs. And where you'd probably want to go to either a Cole, maybe a Fisk down there at -2. God forbid, even going to a Patrick Rogers for a little bit of that putting regression as well to try and find a way to get different to the field. And, if you went with Rogers as your last man in there, that'd be leaving $300 on the table. And it'd give you 2 guys in your lineup that you're playing just for pure short game regression, right? Hoping that they don't lose all those strokes with the flat stick, which is some of my favorite plays out there on any given slate, especially for leverage plays over here for round 4 showdown. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of a sense for what you should be thinking about when going out there and building lineups. I do a lot of this via optimizer. So a lot of the thought kind of gets done for me based on what I do over there with building my lineups. I want at least 2-3 guys starting towards the top. So there's one role I have out there for Sundays, but I also have a product ownership role. I want to have enough leverage out there in my builds to make up for some of that chalk I'm playing elsewhere. So the way I do it is I set a role to make sure that I have less than 1 theoretical dupe out there in every contest. So for example, if I was entering the big 25, I'm entering the $5 GPP for tomorrow, but I would take 1 over 94.11 and I would set that equal to my product ownership max, meaning that my product ownership in every lineup is going to be less than 1 over that 94.11, so that every single lineup that I'm entering should only have 1 combination over there, at least 1 theoretical combination over there in those GPPs. If your theoretical dupes is like 5 or 6, that means in theory, there could be 5 or 6 lineups that have that same exact combination. And in reality, it's going to be even higher than that in actual practice because people spend all their salary. So that's what I do out there for my product ownership is I try and make sure that there's a little to no chance that I'm actually going to duplicate with other people in contests. And if you want my full take on that, you guys can obviously hit me up on the Discord, whether it's on the SHIPIT Nation one or over on the one for my Patreon page and ask me about exactly how I set that up. But it depends on the contest size, right? If I'm in a contest with only like 500 entries, I can take a lot more ownership because I only have 1 theoretical dupe. It's going to be a lot easier to stay under that threshold when there's only 500 entries that I'm going against. Whereas if this was like, let's say a 50,000 entry contest, well, then I'm really constraining myself when it comes to that ownership. And that's how you should be thinking about game theory, right? The bigger the contest, the more people that you have to play, the bolder you need to be out there with your exposure. Whereas if you're in like a 10-person single entry, you don't have to be really bold at all to go out there and take that kind of thing down, right? You're just beating 9 other slapdicks, right? Out there in a contest, not really rocket science to go out there and accomplish that. So that's the game theory section. That's talking about some of the lineup construction and what you should be thinking about. Best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are going with out there for tomorrow. Smash that like button for the SHIPIT Nation crew if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the content in the future. We're doing the same thing for rounds 2 through 4 next week. Of course, that is for the Masters, our first major of the year. So if you can't tell with the smile on my face, I am super excited out there for next week. And of course, for the prop and betting live stream, which will be on my YouTube channel a little bit later on tonight. That's on the LukeDFS YouTube. You can find that over here on YouTube or on X/Twitter. You can follow me there as well to get all the updates on exactly when I'm going live. But if you're entering underdog and prize picks props, or over there on the sports books with matchups and 3-balls, that sort of thing, that is what that live stream is for. And today we went perfect on our bets. We did not miss a single bet over there on underdog and prize picks, which last night, I forget who it was, somebody in my live chat over there called it, said, "Hey, Luke, I'm feeling a really nuclear day. I think you're going to go out there and sweep." And I got to figure out who it is. I got to go back and watch because I owe him a couple drinks or two. I know I'm only having some coffee now, but I might have to pour something out for that guy because to say he called it would be an understatement. So make sure to check that out later on if that's something that you guys are going out there and entering. Best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are going with. Main slate, we could have a few sweats over there for myself. So hopefully in that $5 GPP, I can try and find my way into that top 10, top 20. I'll try and get one of those big payouts up there towards the top end of the board. So that we have a little bit of extra bankroll to work with over there for the Masters. But let me see if there's any last second questions. If not, we're going to hop on out of here. Hey, dude, that $12 looks crazy. You're saying, given the weather, will guys headed to Augusta kind of mail it in? I think you have to take that on a player-by-player basis, Aaron. And I personally try and avoid the whole narrative thing for the most part. So not going to be a part of my process. You're wacky for Valimaki. Yeah, me too, man. I think he's a good one. One must deduct at least 0.5 from Novak's shots gained approach. I would agree with that, Aaron. Yeah, that's probably at least a half a stroke difference from bouncing off that there, but still really good ball striking day outside of that 0.5 shot. Could get your boy Cam Young, Luke, or are there still Cam Young believers out there? Yeah, man. I mean, I think he's playing okay this week. He's playing better than what he has lately, but I mean, round 4 showdown, let me look at his ownership real quick. So this, of course, is via my projections. This is not on SHIPIT. So don't be quoting SHIPIT on these ownership projections. Right? I'll take full accountability for this one. I've got him at sub 5%, and I'm playing him tomorrow. So if you're asking about Cam Young and whether I'm using him, yeah, I'm still a believer. I'm still going out there and doling him out. He's at -1, so he's not going to get you like top 5 placement. Like you kind of know that ahead of time. But could he top 15, top 10? I mean, top 10 would probably be kind of pushing it as well. But, you know, he has a solid -3 round, and I have a hard time thinking he finishes outside the top 15. So, yeah, I'm going to be there, man. It's an ugly, really scary play, though. What would be my strategy with a Hoagie and Novak outright bet? I'd probably fade them in showdown then. I'd probably just go to other guys up top would be the main way I'd handle that. That would be if you're looking for a self-hedge. I mean, the real answer, the one that I go with a lot of times, though, Nick, is I play Novak and Hoagie in round 4 showdown because I liked them this week. They're playing well. They've shown me the form so far. So I guess it depends on how you're feeling, right? You want to self-hedge a little bit. You could go out there and maybe play some of the other guys towards the top. If you're feeling good about yourself, you want to go out there, go all in or nothing, then maybe you just go out there and ride with them. It's a tough one. I've done it both ways before. I've self-hedged before. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that with Minwoo over there on Sunday. But I've also gone the other way, right? I've also gone all in before. So I'm going to be interested to see what you choose on that one. And he said, is Connors going to be chalky in single entry? I don't know if I'd call him chalky, but yeah, he's going to have some ownership. In fact, of the guys that are 10K plus, I've got the lowest owned of the bunch at Jordan Spieth. They're at -3. Tommy Fleetwood, I've actually got still getting ownership at $10,800 because the pricing is as soft as it is. You had a lot of guys towards the top end up missing the cut. So pricing is a little bit softer than what we're used to seeing for round 4. So I don't know if I'd call him chalky, but everyone in that range is kind of going to be in that same sort of like 20% mark over there for round 4. So not a pivot play, but not sure I'd call him chalky either. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the live stream. Best of luck with all that exposure that you guys are getting to. And I'll see you guys out there for next week at the Masters.